Hi there, I'm Danny Henderson, and today my guest is an online trauma therapist, but oh, so much more than that. She's so much more than that. Guys, let me introduce you to my beautiful long-term friend and therapist, Lou Lebentz. Good morning, Lou.
Good evening, Danny. Lovely to see you. And thank you for having me here. I hope whatever we're going to discuss is going to be really helpful to those listening.
Absolutely. And as you and I know, we've worked a long time as therapists in different genres, and you have been one of the most revered on many levels in the UK. Way back in the day, what was called celebrity rehab centers. Your name was the name on everyone's lips at one point. And still to this day, you've expanded, you've grown. There's so much that you do in terms of therapy, recovery, and trauma. Also, last year, you actually trained 30 American recovery coaches. Can you introduce yourself a little bit and tell us about that? The fact that you're a bit of a world leader in your field and
Oh,
teaching
wow.
America. Well, it's true, Lou. I know you're
Well,
humble
that's
now. I know you're
yeah, that's
humble.
yeah, that's very kind. And I'm delighted that for the first time I became a global trainer, because I guess you can call yourself that when you train people from the UK to the USA. And yes, I took a group of wonderful, amazing recovery coaches that work in the addiction field predominantly and with eating disorders. I took them through a process that I've written called the Voyage. And the Voyage has been in my head, as you know, Danny, for many years. And wanting really to pull together a process and it's a metaphor. So I always think healing is very much like a journey. It's very much like a voyage. So the voyage is a sea metaphor about how we heal after trauma. And I've used it as a program, if you like, to then train coaches and therapists and counselors themselves about how to work with clients with trauma. So that's what I was doing with the Americans.
Yeah, and I'm sure it was very successful because we need to expand how we treat, how we give therapy in different ways, because the human being is such a beautiful, complicated vessel. There's more of an opening spiritually, emotionally these days, that we are looking for different ways. So, Lou, oh, I always want to put you back on gallery. Lou, how in life, every individual, when they think about a friend, they'll have an inner response to that friend. And generally, it's how that friend makes them feel. And it's an unconscious, subconscious emotion that we have. Well, whenever I think of you, there's always a giggle. it's a giggle right behind it. And it's interesting
Fun,
because,
yeah.
right, you and I have dealt with some of the most horrifically, horrendously harmed and maimed patients over our careers as therapists. And I will say you in particular, because I have always been in awe of the work, the cases that you've had and the people that you've helped. And, people sometimes don't quite understand how traumatized a person can actually be. And we obviously are being very mindful of that. There are others who, in some degree, can be considered a little bit more robust, but I still think everyone is a deeply, deeply tender heart, really deep down inside. What do you think?
I agree. And I think everybody's heart deep down inside is tender and kind and loving. And it's just getting to that, or it's peeling back the layers to re-arrive at that tender, kind, loving heart. And I think we're all diamonds, aren't we, underneath? And then, life happens to us. And unfortunately, shit happens, as they say, and we get encrusted and covered over. And we have to, we're really the diamond kind of polishers to come back to bringing somebody back to their pure essence. And yeah, I agree, underneath it all, we are all that.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
are all
definitely.
turning to that in some way, shape, or form,
Yeah.
just finding it.
Right. And you're not a therapist who just sits on her laurels and just takes her workload. And I don't like that phrase workload. I mean, these are human beings, but this is some of the grammar that we've been gifted from whoever, thanks thesaurus, thanks the Oxford Dictionary, thanks the profession. But you take these people so dear to heart, and you really do spend time, and you really do lift them up. I mean, there are so many amazing stories of recovery with humans that you've taken and you've supported. And I love how you've never stopped training. You're always working or creating. And when I was saying about the giggle in the back of the mind when you think about a friend, well, obviously you and I spent some time in San Diego together.
Oh my gosh.
And wasn't that the funniest thing? And conferences are great. I've got one coming up in October this year, and you're also on a massive one in Oxford in September. Can we say who else is on the roster with you?
I don't know whether it's been let out yet. I
Oh,
don't think the marketing has started for it yet. So I'm not even allowed to promote it yet. But
okay.
watch this space. It will be. As soon as I'm allowed, Danny, I'll send you the link and maybe we can put it underneath.
That would be great. And also, guys out there, that just for you to know that one of the other main trauma therapists, we call him, right? A leading edge trauma therapist. Yeah.
It depends who you.
I mean, the guy with the crazy hair that retired and came out, and he's everywhere now. The guy with the G name starts with G.
Oh, okay. He's more of a doctor by trade. So his background is a psychiatrist and doctor, I believe, medical. So
right.
Yeah.
But you guys are at the same conference is where I'm getting it in September.
Well, I don't know whether it's been confirmed or not yet. So
All right. Well, there you go, Miss Humble Bumble. All right, guys, it's coming up. We'll let you know more about it. But on that note, conferences, you want to come away feeling good, right? You want to come away feeling touched in some way. And they're very quick. They can be over very, very quick. So you have to do a really, really good job in making people feel amazing. Hopefully they've got some content. The only content I have in a 2-day conference I did with you was all the disco dancing that we did. All the jumping and leaping at the back of the room.
Which was just brilliant. I mean, it still makes me laugh when I think about it. So, I mean, I don't know what else we got, but we got an awful lot of dancing done.
Exactly. Dancing and laughing and jeering around is very, very, very important. Now, during that time, obviously, that we spent together and years before, you had come up with the Voyage. You'd come up with the Voyage. You had it all planned out. This is years in the making. And this is something that I want to bring to my beautiful audience, because a lot of people are still very stressed. They're falling apart. They're unraveling. They're learning about themselves. They're trying to adjust to the new way of the world as she is changing and ascending. And you're not a quick one session fix. You are let me take care of you over an 8-month period. Admirable. I want to hand over to you, Lou, so you can share with the public here what they can expect if they choose to come on board your Voyage, your program. What can they expect to receive from you?
Can I start, Danny, with just maybe saying that the problem is, as I see it, is that most people don't really understand what trauma is, what trauma means, that it's understanding that. And they also, I don't know whether they understand that we are actually a world that is going through enormous amounts of trauma at the moment. And I'm not just talking about the pandemic that we've all experienced. I mean, the climate crisis, the wars, the the horrors that we're reading about on the news, the political unrest. I mean, we are really a world that is struggling with mass trauma of some description or another. And I think as human beings, you cannot not be affected by that. You cannot not have that enter your system and activate you in some way. And I think trauma really is about how much activation can any one person's nervous system take consistently on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And really another word for trauma is almost like chronic stress. And I think that there are a lot of us going around at the moment with symptoms of trauma and chronic stress, but maybe we don't realize that those are symptoms of trauma and chronic stress because we don't actually know what trauma is to start with. And I think when I'm working with people, a lot of people think that trauma is like a big one-off event. They think it's a war, yes, or a tsunami or a rape or something else. But what they don't understand are all the other elements that are also trauma that show up in people's mind body systems. And the lesser known trauma that I always talk about is what I call an aspect 2. So an aspect 1 is a single event. It's a car accident, it's a rape, it's a tsunami, it's an event that you can go, okay, that's trauma, that's a trauma. But people don't know about aspect 2, aspect 3, and aspect 4 traumas. And briefly, if I may, I'd just like to kind of, for the audience, say what those are. So an aspect 2 is when we have been or had a lack of soothing, mirroring, or regulation, attunement with our primary caregivers. So a baby and an infant and a young child need a mother or a father or a primary caregiver to be nicely regulated, be nicely attuned and embodied in their own body. And if they're not that, then we miss that scaffolding of our nervous system, and we cannot regulate as babies and young children ourselves. We need to be soothed. So that's an aspect 2. And that is predominantly what I see coming into my clinic, is somebody with, they might have had, you know, not a parent or on drugs or alcohol, not a parent with a mental health condition, not a parent who was actively dysregulated, but maybe a parent who wasn't really embodied and able to soothe their own emotions. So they couldn't really soothe their child. Then we've got an aspect 3, which is the projection or the introjects that a parent will then pass on to their children. So it's a belief system of the parent. It's the parent's unmetabolized, unprocessed trauma themselves. It's the trauma that maybe a mother or a father don't have a narrative of their own trauma in childhood, or they have a fear of something and it gets kind of projected into the child. And then we got 4. So the last one, I promise, is the intergenerational grandparent story, but it's also the soup that we grew up in. And by I say soup, it's like the environment, it's the collective. Did we grow up in poverty? Did we grow up with racism? Did we grow up with sexism? Were we in a homophobic environment? Were we bullied? What part of the world did we grow up in a war zone? So all of that is the collective trauma added on to the different aspects. And, you know, if we're really unlucky, and I think that many of us are, we've got a bit of all of it going on.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so, you know, recent pandemics, recent instability. I mean, you know, the government in the UK at the moment is feeling pretty unpsychologically safe, dare I say. You know, they're all really activating people's already activated systems, because what we all want deep down, I believe, is we want to feel safe.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And as a world, we're feeling pretty unsafe. Lots of unsafe people in it. So the voyage is for people like that. And for people like that, I don't believe that duration, you can do anything fast. I think there are so many quick fix programs out there that say, come to me and I can heal you in one session, or, 7 days, or whatever it is. And we ignore that there might be layers and layers of this person's trauma. They might have dissociated for years. They might be completely disembodied and not able to even regulate their own nervous system. Well, you're not going to sort something like that out in one session or even 1 month. We need depth, and we need duration and time, and we need community and safety and safe other people, because we need somebody with us to help us learn how to regulate our system again. Come into the body, come in gently, come out of dissociation, and start to feel safe within your own system, because you feel regulated by another person, or a safe other, or a safe community.
Yeah.
And I guess that what I saw from my 20 years in private treatment, and working at the end, dare I say, with people that can afford therapy and can afford to put money behind their healing journey, was I saw all the other people that slip between the cracks, that don't have the finances to be able to do what we do, or see somebody like us. And I know for myself, and I'm not sure about you, Danny, but I know for my own healing journey from, being locked up and sectioned when I was in my early 20s, that I literally had to fund all of my own journey to wellness, and all my own training, and it pretty much took everything that I had. It all went into, and I don't believe that other people should have to do that. I believe that there should be offers for people that are affordable and accessible. And even though the Voyage this year, and I'm opening it up for the general public and not just coaches, and that's another level of it, but one area is for the general public, is I've made it as affordable as I possibly can for a live training. So it's £24 an hour for 8 hours a month, and you're in a community, in a group. But at some point, I'm going to make that even cheaper, and I'm going to make it more affordable and more accessible, because I believe there are gazillions of people out there who don't have access to diddly squat, as we say in
diddly squat. You're just so beautiful. I mean, right there, I love how you're so brave. You step forward, you just lay it all out, and you're just seeing what you said. And to the guys watching this, there's actually 2 other broadcasts on my channel. If you just go to my channel, Danny Henderson, and then you click on where it says videos, and there's a whole drop down, there's at least 2 other broadcasts that Lou and I have done. And I think the last one we did before this one a few months ago was where you go into much more detail about the horrific total mental breakdown that you had on the street in London by yourself, wandering around in traffic, and that terrible depth of psychosis. Thank goodness you have been in recovery, recovered, and you're using your trauma that's healed to help others. And the way you speak, I mean, honestly, I have the greatest admiration for you. Because you truly do embody love and kindness and compassion and humility. And, you're Lebentz. You're the greatest therapist and more that I've ever met in my life. I'm so proud to bring you on my channel. So proud to share this journey, the Voyage, your Voyage journey. So people, when they hear that, I don't know how much £24 is, I forget what the conversion is to America, but when you look like me, when I was in my, practicing online, which I've had to shut down my clinic, unfortunately, I was charging $220 an hour as a qualified trained therapist. And, £24 an hour is unbelievable. And what you're doing is trying to make it so affordable, so anyone who needs that level of care can come in, stay with you on this journey, and be with others. And it's over an 8-month course, which is
Well,
right.
yeah. I mean, we've actually shortened it because the feedback that we got initially was that 8 months was too long for everybody. So we've gone, okay, this year we'll do 2 lots of 4 months, and then next year we'll do longer. And then the year after, I really hope, and maybe I'll find a way, Danny, you know, maybe there'll be somebody watching this that goes, I love it. Here you go, off you go with it. But you know, the year after, if I could make it a monthly membership program, you know, I wonder whether there is in the UK at least some form of sponsorship, or, you know, the government in the UK, they pay for Weight Watchers, you know, 20 odd pounds a week. Well, the Voyage could be the answer to that, and, you know, mental health. And you know, don't get me started on what mental health actually means, because what does the word mental mean? It's like, it's ludicrous that we still call it mental health. You know, like, where's the mind? Point to mental, where is it? Like, you know, everything that we're talking about and trauma is about the connection between the mind and body. And dare I say, for your audience too, it's about that soul connection. It's about that spiritual connection. And psychotherapy used to mean study of the soul. So the Voyage for me is about including all of those elements for people, and eventually in a way that if you've been through trauma, you cannot expect yourself to get over it quick. So all these people out there that promise I can do this and that, and I can do absolute, excuse my French, it's bollocks. The nervous system doesn't want to do it quickly. It needs to do it gently. So I always say, think of your body as like a Coca-Cola bottle. You've had trauma, and you might have had one after the other, an early developmental trauma. Your system is like a Coca-Cola bottle shaken up, you know, and you open that too much, and the fizz, what happens to the fizz? Up out the top. So I believe in programs that open it very slowly and gently, and they teach you how to regulate that fizz, what that fizz is, or even what that flatness is, which is the opposite of fizz, because we're either in our anxiety and we're like hyper arousal, or we're flat and low and we're in our hypo with no fizz whatsoever. And that's the extremes of trauma.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's so beautiful. Thank you for laying this out again, because people, I feel like, really gently, lovingly need another reminder to come back into what therapy is, what could be happening in them. So they're kinder to themselves. They talk to themselves sweeter, you know, more sweeter. They recognize that they need to be kind to the inner child who's always traumatized, if not dealt with. I'd love you to also, if it's all right, I've mentioned it many times on my channel, but I'd love another more qualified therapist to explain to people watching this the difference between the fight, the flight, the freeze, the flop, and the fawn, please.
Okay. How do I do that succinctly? And Danny, can I just say, I don't know whether I said earlier on, when you said those wonderful things about me, that I had tears in my eyes and felt very, very touched.
Ah, darling.
Thank you.
Well, I love you, Lebentz, you know that.
I love you too, my beauty. So how do I explain? Okay, so how I'm going to explain it is, if we think about fight or flight, those are active defenses, and they are what happen in our sympathetic nervous system. And then if we think about flop or friend or fawn, as you call it, we think those are very passive. And those passive are in our parasympathetic system. And we get stuck in either one or the other. So hyper arousal, hyper fast anxiety driven, is really a bit of fight or flight or freeze that's on. rabbit in the headlights. Yeah. Hypoarousal, flat, depressed, disconnected, is more of our passive, is more of our fawn response, or our flop, submit, give up, helpless, hopeless, powerless. And if you think about what's very popular at the moment, is something called the polyvagal theory. And the polyvagal theory is by a wonderful man called Stephen Porges, who is a very gentle soul, who says at the top of this window up here in green, think of the traffic light system. So we're green for go. We are all in our adult, what he calls ventral vagal. And in our ventral vagal adult state, we are calm, we are curious, we are compassionate, we are connected. We're all those wonderful C's. And then something starts to happen, either inside of us or outside of us. And you start to give me, I don't know, Danny, maybe a funny look. And I go, oh, she's looking at me a bit funny. So I start to withdraw, and I'm coming out of green and I'm starting to go down into amber. And as soon as I'm starting to go into amber, I'm on alert and I'm starting to go into my fight flight. And if my fight flight doesn't work, I can't get away, I'm a bit stuck, or you're bigger than me, what my nervous system and my prehistoric brain will do is it will go, I'm not going to be able to run or fight out of this. All I can do is freeze, or I can flop, or I can absolutely just submit. And then I'm in the bottom of the traffic light, or Stephen Porges's ventral vagal sympathetic. I'm in at the bottom, it's called dorsal vagal collapse. So every mental health symptom out there is to do with being in one or another of these places. Because when we're not in ventral vagal at the top in green, and we're not in our adult, and we're not connected, and we're not curious and compassionate and all of that, as soon as we come out of that, what switches off is our social engagement system. And also what switches off is we're starting to disconnect. We are starting to dissociate. And for me, even my psychosis, looking back 30 years, was an extreme end of dissociation. And it was an extreme end that there was so much happening in my system that I couldn't regulate. I wasn't embodied. I was completely disconnected, that it was almost like the lights blew out. Mm-hmm. And so gently, when we're working with somebody in therapy, and particularly, hopefully, with a therapist who isn't a cognitivist, which means that they don't think everything is about thinking, because we know that the body remembers, the body keeps the score, and actually the body holds supremacy, really. And what we need to do is we need to titrate very gently back into the body. So in the Voyage, the waves are the body, the sea is the body. And many people, I say, have been on dry land with their boat parked up for bloody years. And what we need to do is we need to get them back in the boat and get them sailing again and not scared of the water, so that they can start to feel sensations and small emotions back in their body-mind system.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful, beautiful. And you do it in such a gentle way. You have a beautiful multi-tonal voice. that beautiful, the voice of the angels, the therapeutic, the tonal levels, the high frequency vibration. You definitely have that in spades. You do. And thank you so much. You know, the when I said freeze, flop, fight, flight, which is something very fundamental that we all learn in therapy, and also common sense for those that aren't therapists too. Where I got fawn from was from a lady, a friend of mine. Her name is Gloria Masters, and she was rented out as a little beautiful little baby girl. She was rented to grown men in gangs for them to tie her down and do whatever they wanted to do to her. And she's such a brave woman. I love Gloria Masters. Hi, Gloria Masters.
Hi, Gloria. I've been in touch with Gloria too. We've never met, but I know of Gloria. So I didn't.
Oh, yeah, good. Yeah, she's very special. And she taught me the fawn. And for her, when she was being passed around over a 2-day weekend, in between breaks, she might be chained to someone to get water, and she would be fawning over that adult, almost desperately, like, please be good to me, please be kind to me, you're so special, thank you so much, fawning, hoping that they might show her some kindness when it was their turn, which is just horrific. But they never did. So I got the fawn from her. So that's where it came from.
I mean, some trauma specialists are trying to stop us using that word now because they think it's pejorative. So
pejorative. Lou, sorry, mate. That sounds like an Irish word. It's pejorative. What the hell does pejorative mean, please? I don't understand. I'm confused.
It means, I know I'm not going to be able to explain. It's kind of like a negative put down if you say to somebody, you're fawning. To some people, they don't like the actual word or the terminology of to fawn. So, you know, other people are calling it please appease or friending, you know, because apparently what we do as human beings anyway is the first thing we try and work out is if we can make friends with the perpetrators. Before we fight or flight, it's like, have I got any chance here of if I befriend? And that's what, you know, poor Gloria, but I mean, that's what Stockholm syndrome is.
Survival. It's a survival mechanism. It's a built-in defense mechanism.
Yeah. And what we have to get across to anybody listening is all of these things are built in. So when I work with rape victims or sexual abuse survivors, some of the shame and guilt that they feel about going into freeze response, and I'm like, but that's not your fault. That's nothing to do with you. That's your brain mechanism going in unconsciously, completely to shut you down so that you survive. There's no fault that is just nothing to do with you. You couldn't consciously have done anything different. Please don't have a go at yourself about that.
Yeah, crucial.
Please. So I think once we understand, and I think that's what I do with the voyage, you know, the first 2 or 3 waves, because each step of the voyage is called a wave, is all about really psychoeducation, awareness. What does the nervous system do? What does the brain do? What's the brain like on trauma? All of the stuff that I was talking about early on about attachment and, you know, developmental stuff, feeling regulated and soothed in relationships. All of that gets taught to anybody that comes on my program because they have to become the expert in them. Mm-hmm. And once you understand the brain science behind things and you see things like addiction as a response to trauma, nobody's an addict, and I don't even like that terminology, but nobody has an addiction issue or an eating disorder or anything else if they haven't had trauma, because addiction is a response to trauma. It's a way to numb out.
Yeah. And so people could also be kinder when they see people who are incredibly obese, overweight, you know, fat, whatever label you want to put on it. And then recognize that person has been through something that you have no idea. You have no idea. So be quiet with your mean bitchy comments, you know, at
Yeah,
the
and the
other
people that
extreme.
are making the mean bitchy comments, you know, what I would say, trying to be as non-judgmental and compassionate as possible with all of them too, is, so really, you might have a thing about food, but really, are you not on your cell phone for 8 hours a day? Are you not ever binge watching Netflix? Are you not working a bit too much? Are you not over exercising? So you're saying that there's no coping strategy that you use whatsoever to manage your own body and your feelings and to numb out?
Yeah, to numb out. There it is, right there, to numb
So
out.
can we stop putting things in hierarchies? It's like when I worked at the Priory, you know, alcoholics would come in and say, oh, but I'm not a drug addict.
Well, that's all right then.
But alcohol's a drug. So
Mhm.
how can you say? So I'm just saying that we're all very good at making judgments about other people and where we are, but actually if we come at it through a trauma-informed lens, we start to recognize why people are doing what they're doing behaviorally. And not only that, we think about, how can I respond to that person differently than making a judgment call?
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely beautiful. I know that we need to be wrapping up time-wise today. You have other clients to see. I would love for you to tell us about your Facebook page, Trauma Thrivers, please, so people can just sign up there. And what can they expect on Trauma Thrivers on Facebook?
On Trauma Thrivers Facebook group, it's a free Facebook group. There's about 5,500 people, I think, in it now, and it's half clinicians and therapists and coaches, but it's also half what I like to call thrivers, not survivors, because we're all on a journey to thriving. So it's where everybody meets in the middle, really. And there's lots of sharing of resources. There's some great people in there. Come in, join, ask questions. You can really get your needs met in that group. And it's a very safe space, because that's what we need with trauma. So you're very welcome, anybody, to join that. Love to see you.
Thank you so much, Lou. And if you could, of course, I'll put the Voyage details underneath so people can go take a look at that too. But give the website here, please, because some people don't ever look underneath for details.
Okay, well, on traumathrivers.com, if you go to the tab on the top, there's the Voyage. And actually, I've got, if anybody's interested, a free masterclass coming up in 2 weeks. I think it's the 22nd of February at 6:15 in the UK. So that's a free 1 hour, and that's talking about the truth about trauma and treatment. So it will be going more into depth about things that we spoke about today. So anybody is welcome to sign up for that. That's in 2 weeks' time. And then in March, I start the 4-month Voyage process on a Friday lunchtime or Saturday morning UK time, for a small amount and group to go through the first 8 waves foundation of the Voyage. And all of that is on the Voyage tab under personal development. So I've also got the coach training that we're running again this year. So if there's any coaches or therapists or counselors listening, go to the professional training. But the personal training is for you if you're interested in doing work on yourself.
Well, and in my opinion, and having done this myself, anyone who dares to call themselves a therapist, no matter how much training they've had and how many licenses they have, we would hope that they have done a lot of internal personal work and development, or they should not be in charge of patients or clients.
I always say, yeah, I agree. And I think, listen, we're all works in progress, aren't we? All of us. And I'm still on a journey of, metabolizing some of my own trauma still. It does come up, believe you me.
Yeah.
It's much more manageable than it ever was, but it's still little bit there.
Yeah.
So I sometimes go back to who I was 20 years ago at the beginning of when I was a therapist and think I'm very different now, 2 decades later, to how I was then. And I also say to the coaches and people that I train that nobody is really ever paying us for our knowledge, I don't believe. I think with you, Danny, as well. And, you know, I know you well. I've known you for 15 years, and you have an incredible heart and are extremely generous and a loving, compassionate, dear person. And I think that's what people really essentially are getting from us and paying us for. That I always say, you're paying me for my nervous system, not for what I know. And that's that ability, if you like. I think that when you, whoever is looking to work with somebody, what you want to make entirely sure about, for me, is that you feel safe and resonant with that person.
Yeah.
And that they can hear you, not what you say, but they can be with you really and how you feel. Because being in the body with those emotions and helping people ride the waves, we've got to have ridden a few waves ourselves. We've got to be able to dive down and swim with those fishes and not be scared of it, you know, and hold our breath and take those people down. We are the dolphins that are swimming alongside. And I think that's what's really important in healing and treatment, that we have that safe person or safe people alongside us who have got our back and are swimming alongside us too. And that's what I think the Voyage gives people, or will give people.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Well, again, I'm so proud of you, watching you create the Voyage and see it come to fruition after so many years of testing and trying and putting the right components together to help the most traumatized, you know, to those in recovery, to those really wanting to look at certain things to heal on a different level. Lebentz, you are amazing. You are a gift to us. I love you so much. I'm so grateful that you had time for my beautiful audience today, and those of you out there who will see this. Lou, can I hand over to you for final words, please?
Just to say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for inviting me. Thank you to anybody that's listening. Bless you for getting with us to the end. I'm sure some of the topics that we spoke about were probably a little bit activating for a few of you. So thank you for getting to the end. And if I can be of any service, please just reach out and let Danny know too, if there's something that you'd like me to cover maybe, or come back, because any excuse to see this woman, I'm there, I'm here, I would love to do it again. So yeah, please let us know.
Yeah, that would be great. That's a great idea. I know we've offered it before too, but yeah, it will be good to take some different subjects apart and just help people who really want more input, and we can do that definitely on the small but mighty channel. Lebentz, thank you, my darling. Thank you so much. Wishing you the very best with the Voyage and those that join you on it. And to you guys out there, thank you so much for being with us today. My name is Danny Henderson. I will see you soon. Lots of love to you.